Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome to my Wild Rift tier list for patch 4.0a. We got a lot of changes in this patch to a lot of champions, which means my tier list has changed quite a lot. I've also been spamming a lot of legendary queue recently, and I'm currently in like the top 50, so I'm always playing high elo games at the moment in EU in legendary queue. So I feel like I have a pretty good read on the meta, and that means that I have changed quite a few champions quite a lot. So we'll go through all the changes that I've done in the tier list for this patch. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you leave a like and make sure you subscribe to the channel, because I've a lot of great content coming out. I've got new Lucian builds, I've got a new Corki build to show you. There's a bunch of new content coming out over the next few days, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But let's head straight into the tier list. Now, some roles have changed a bit, some roles have not really changed too much. First up, we have the Baron lane. First thing I want to talk about is the nerf that happened to Aatrox. Aatrox received a nerf in patch 4.0a, which was the healing when you use your ultimate. I don't think that really has affected too much for Aatrox. I still think Aatrox is a really big lane bully, really annoying champion as well to deal with. Still has a lot of healing, even with the reduced healing of his ultimate now. I think that his healing is still insane. His crowd control is really good as well with his knockups. His damage is also crazy and out of control. So for me, Aatrox still stays in the S+ tier and is still a very good champion. Probably one of the best champions to play right now in the Baron lane. Next champion is Set. Set did get a little bit adjusted this patch. His base AD went up, but his attack speed per level went down. I have been seeing a lot more Set in high elo in legendary queue, and to be honest, it hasn't been performing that bad. I actually think it's been performing really well. I think the extra AD in the early game has helped Set's early game a lot. You could take a lot more trades now with Sets. You can win a lot more duels as well in the early game, and that base AD obviously scales up as well. You know, it doesn't scale as great into the late game, but it means that your AD level hasn't changed at all, so it means that you're just getting constantly more AD as the game goes on. And with obviously Set's build, you go like Black Cleaver, Divine Sundra, these items like that, so you're still getting a lot of AD from your items, which means you'll be able to do a lot of damage. In terms of everything else, nothing else has changed in the Baron lane. You know, Set and Aatrox also got unchanged, but I just wanted to talk to you through my thoughts on the champions that did get changed in this patch. But everything is still pretty much exactly the same. You know, Wukong still really strong, versatile champion. A lot of healing, a lot of great team fight control. Renekton, really good early game bully that can be a huge tank for your team. Akali as well, really great assassin. A little bit weak in the early game, but if you get a few items with Akali, she is really annoying to deal with, especially with her second ability turning invisible. Jax, really strong split push, same with Fiora as well. Both these two are two of the best split pushers in the game right now and are very strong. Jace, really strong lane bully, has so many different abilities. You've got your range form and your melee form, and he's still insanely good. Garen's a really good tank, really easy to play, and we have Camille as well after the rework that happened to Camille. Camille is definitely rising up to be one of the best Baron laners now because of the little rework that she had, but also it's kind of a buff as well at the same time. Shen's a still really good tank to play, a little bit hard to kind of split push even after the changes that happened to him, all the split push and everything. As I do get a follow, thank you. I thought I was streaming for a second, not recording, but let me just cancel that for a second. I thought I was streaming for a second. Yeah, Shen with the with tank stats, still really strong. His split pushing not that great, but he's still a really strong tank, and he still can split push and join a fight pretty much in an instant with his ultimate. Gragas you can play as the tank, which I think is the best option, or full AP in the Baron lane. Both offer different ways to play Gragas, but still he's really strong. Darius is still insanely strong team fighter, really strong during the laning phase as well. He does have a lot of healing. Irelia can probably move up into the S+ tier, but she is quite difficult to play. She's quite difficult to master because you need to make sure that you land your other abilities so you can get your resets on your first ability and dash around a lot. But if you understand how to play Irelia, then she can be one of the strongest Baron laners for sure. Set I already spoke about. We got Malphite as well, big massive rock in the Baron lane. I think even after the changes to like Frozen Heart, he's still not one of the best tanks, but he's still pretty good as a tank, and he's still very, very strong. Riven, super flexible. You can play pretty much Riven in any single way. You can play crit Riven, you could play bruiser Riven. Again, another champion that could probably move up into S+ tier. Does have a lot of mobility as well, but the thing is about Riven, again, I feel like her skill cap is quite high with Riven, even though she's quite easy in a way with understanding her abilities, but it's knowing when to dash in, when to use your ultimate, when to know you have enough damage to be able to pop off with Riven. Gwen is still pretty good, even though she struggles a lot during the laning phase. Once you get a few items, she can be very, very strong, but she is very, very weak during the laning phase now after the nerfs that she received. Sion as well, still really strong tank, did get a few buffs recently, is still very, very good. Kennen and Olaf just below. Kennen's pretty good during team fights, but I don't know, Kennen's a weird one where like you can bully quite a lot during a laning phase, and you could be really strong during team fights, but he can be kited very, very easily, and if you're outside your ultimate and you don't have flash or you don't have stasis, then you still can be very vulnerable. I think Olaf's pretty decent, he's not too bad, has a lot of healing, has a lot of damage during the early game, and it can obviously turn unstoppable during team fights. So if you're against a lot of crowd control, then Olaf is really good. A tier, we have Dr. Mundo, which in my opinion is just a worse tank than like Sion, Shen, Gragas, Malphite, any one of these. Just basically a worse tank. Doesn't really do a lot of damage. Is really good against a lot of crowd control because he does have his passive, and is really good against AP champions because he has a lot of healing. But once you get anti-heal against the Aatrox, Executioner's Calling or Oblivion Orb, then he kind of becomes useless. Pantheon, if you can get in a good early game lead, that's really where Pantheon shines. Getting them early game trades, winning the early 1v1 duels, especially with his stuns and his arrows in the early game, can be very, very good. Or his spear, I should say, not his arrow. You can get ahead and you can be very strong. Graves is like okay, I think he's better as a jungler than a Baron laner now. He's kind of fallen off a little bit. And Singed is there as well, even after the buff. I have seen a few Singed being played. I think Singed is like okay, I don't think he's like too great or too bad. A tier I think is fine for Singed. Then you have Teemo, Trendemir, and Nasus. None of this has changed at all as well. Teemo's still a lane bully and still can be very, very annoying to play against, but again, when it comes to team fights, and when it comes to team play, especially because Wild Rift is a very team fight heavy game, he doesn't really offer too much. Same with Trendemir, one of the best split pushers for sure. You can just keep split pushing with Trendemir, and he does have a lot of great 1v1 potential. But again, when it comes to team fights, he's very easy to kite around. Very, very easy to just crowd control. And yes, he has his ultimate, which basically makes him unkillable, but he does do a lot of damage. But other than that, he's kind of a little bit weak, on the weak side. And Nasus as well, can be pretty good in the in lower elos, because you can farm up your first ability very, very easily, and you don't get punished for it. But as you go higher up in the elo, you just get punished as Nasus, because you shouldn't be able to walk up to lane and use your first ability as Nasus, because he is very, very weak. But if you can farm up, if you don't get punished as Nasus, then you can be very, very strong. Same with KO as well, even though she's in the C tier. If you don't get punished as KO in the early game, and if you can get to level 15, then you'll probably win the game. But it's getting to that point which is the difficult part. You have to get to a point of the game where you're at least on 3 items, 4 items, and you're level 15, then you can actually become a carry. But before then, you're not really a carry with KO, and you can struggle quite a bit. Onto the jungle. This is where a lot of changes come in to the jungle. Jungle is a very, very interesting one. First champion I want to talk about is this little devil here, Diana. Oh my god, this champion, holy moly. Diana is disgusting. I put her in the S tier before, but I've come up against many different Diana jungles, and this is the same with mid lane now as well. Diana is insanely strong. Not only does she deal a huge amount of burst damage now, she basically has a new build with like Luden's Echo, and you go Electrocute now instead of going Conqueror, where Conqueror before was more to do with like sustained damage and dealing more damage basically over a long duration. Now Diana is all about burst damage, all about landing your first ability, landing your first ability, which means you can dash with your third ability basically for free, and then use your second ability or use your ultimate to quickly proc Electrocute and do a huge amount of burst damage. It's a ADC's worst nightmare, Diana, in the jungle, and honestly I think she's one of the best junglers at the moment, one of the best AP junglers anyway, with Lilia being up there as well. But insanely strong, really, really easy to clear through the jungle as well. You can always stay healthy because you have your shielding of your second ability. high burst damage, very good champion. Highly recommend to play Diana. Like I said, every ADC's worst nightmare. I always banned Kha'Zix, but I've been starting to ban Diana recently. But Kha'Zix is still on the same level. Same with everyone in S+ tier, to be honest. Wukong is not really a carry jungler in the way compared to like other junglers, but is a very good, easy to play, beginner friendly champion that you can play in the jungle. But Aatrox is still insanely strong even after the nerfs. It's still really good. Lee Sin, one of the best early game junglers, a lot of mobility and a lot of playmaking potential with his ultimate. Kha'Zix with his isolation damage is still absolutely insane. One of the fastest jungle clearers in the game. Olaf, when paired with Lulu and Yumi, you know, you've probably seen it before already, but is insanely strong. But again, really good against crowd control, really high burst damage. Lilia is still very good as well. And maybe she's like falling off a little bit, but I still see Lilia's pop off, especially if you can you know, flash in, use your first ability, use your ultimate and put everyone to sleep, which means your team, rest of your team can follow up and do a high amount of damage. And then you have Diana as well in the S+ tier. I mean, Diana is just insanely strong, absolutely insanely strong. It has mean that one champion is removed from the S+ tier, which I have removed Yone, or I shouldn't say removed, but I've moved Yone down into the S tier. I think after the nerfs with Yone, he doesn't have that much shielding in the jungle anymore. He's not really as good in the jungle, especially after the nerfs that happened with him. You don't do as much damage in the jungle anymore. With your second ability, you don't have that much shielding, and also his ganking potential is not really, I mean, his ganking potential, don't get me wrong, is still good. You know, you can still use your third ability, basically jump in completely free, but you don't get that much shielding anymore. You don't get that much damage, you don't have that much wave clear, and you don't have that much clear speed in the jungle anymore. But he's still a very strong champion. That's why I still left him in the S+ tier, and to be honest, he could probably still move into the still can probably stay in the S+ tier, but I think Yone has dropped off a little bit. I haven't seen Yone's pop off as much with the recent patch, with the nerfs that happened to Yone, but he's still a very strong champion to play, don't get me wrong, and he's still very good, so still highly recommend to pick him up. Echo received a jungle buff. I think Echo was fine even before the buff, to be honest. I mean, yes, his jungle clear was a little bit slow, but I still think Echo as a jungler is still, it brings something different. You know, you have a lot of great ganks, but the great thing about Echo is that he's really good at tower dives. He's really good at jumping onto the enemy backline and basically getting out for completely free, and he does a huge amount of burst damage as well, which is a great thing about Echo. But obviously with the buff that happened with Echo Jungle, it means that Echo Jungle is still going to be insanely strong. Not S+ tier worthy, but still S tier, and he's still very strong to play. Rengar. Rengar is another one. Obviously everything else has stayed in the S tier. Rengar, I've actually moved up into A+ tier, and the reason being is that I've been seeing a lot of crit Rengar going around at the moment, and crit Rengar is actually popping off. Like, it's actually doing an insane amount of damage. I thought before that lethality Rengar was probably the best way to go with Rengar, but wow, crit Rengar, Navori Quick Blade, Solari Charge Blade, Bloodthirster, that sort of build. Not only do you do a lot of damage and you one-shot basically any enemy carries, but you take towers insanely fast with his empowered first ability. You could take towers very quickly. If you take Demolish, you could basically get the first tower of the game before the objectives even spawn, because he's one of the fastest tower taking champions in the game. So that, on top of the crit Rengar being very strong, and him obviously turn invisible, can basically one-shot backline carries, and also his second ability as well means that you can basically if you get hit by any crowd control, then you can basically remove that crowd control and walk away to safety, because you get that huge amount of burst and movement speed. That's all the reasons why I've moved Rengar up into A+. I don't think he's S tier worthy. I think all the champions at S tier are probably better to play than any of the A+ tier champions. But I think Rengar is definitely a champion to maybe give a try, especially crit Rengar with the new build as well. If you want to check the build, you can check it on my website. Everything has been updated for the recent patch. And with a couple of champions moving up into A+ tier, I did move a couple of champions down into A tier. Warwick and Nautilus were the two champions that I moved down into A tier. I think both these champions are not really that strong at all. Warwick's a weird one. I mean, when Warwick first came out, I think everyone knew that Warwick wasn't going to be broken. Warwick is a very beginner friendly jungler. He's never really going to be like an outstanding, oh my god, he's going to be a carry jungler. Like he's going to be a Kha'Zix or a Lee Sin or one of these OP junglers. I think everyone realized when Warwick first came out that he wasn't going to be the best champion. I think the problem is with Warwick is that there are just many different mobility champions that could just dodge his ultimate or pretty much just kite him very, very easily. He doesn't really offer too much. He does have a lot of attack speed, and in lower elos he can probably pop off because you can just keep auto attacking him over and over again. But again, high elo is very, very hard to perform. I don't think he's that strong at the moment in terms of damage and tank stats and everything as well. Same with Nautilus. I think Nautilus jungle could still work. I think it's still a cool, unique thing to play in the jungle. Again, I don't think, especially with the nerfs that happened to Nautilus as well, I just don't think he's as strong as he was before. Before he was like S and A plus tier because there was a huge massive trend with Nautilus jungle with going tank, but now there's a couple of other junglers that have come up and risen up to be really, really strong, especially with new release champions like Aatrox and Yone. So that's why Nautilus is slowly moving down the tier list. Next champion. Yeah. I don't know who to start with. I got two more champions to talk about. Okay, let's start off with Blue Kayn. Okay, Blue Kayn's a weird one. I always try and play Blue Kayn because I really, really like the play style of Blue Kayn on PC League. I think, going around one-shotting enemy champions is really, really fun. Going around, you could just, move in and out of team fights. You can just use your first ability, use your second ability, auto attack, ultimate, and then normally the backline carries dead. That still doesn't happen in Wild Rift, even after the recent buffs of Shadow Kayn. And that's made it enough for me to even move him down to A tier. Now, you would normally think, oh, a buff, he would move up a tier. No, the buff actually moved him down a tier because I kept trying to play him and I just kept realizing how bad Blue Kayn is and how much better Red Kayn is as well. Like, Red Kayn is completely broken. I have a video on Red Kayn very, very soon, which I'll probably talk a little bit more about the buffs to Blue Kayn in a little bit more detail. But holy moly, Blue Kayn is just, yeah. I mean, you can have like full lethality items. You could be like 3-4 items. You can have so many kills and you still can't one-shot the backline carries. Like, you still can't one-shot them because Blue Kayn just doesn't do enough damage. Like, even after the buff, he still doesn't do enough damage. So that's why. And another champion I want to talk about, which might surprise quite a few of you, is moving up a Amumu into A tier. Okay, let's talk about Amumu quickly. I changed Amumu's build on a website as well, but I think the full AP Nunu is actually better. Full AP Amumu is better than tank Amumu. However, I still don't think Amumu is that good of a champion. I think he's decent. Like, I see the potential for full AP Amumu, and I have to say that Amumu is the fastest major objectives clear, like the big objectives like Dragon, Baron, Rift Herald. He is the fastest clearing jungler in terms of major objectives like that. Like, he can solo Baron. He's one of the only champions that can solo Baron with this full AP build. It's crazy the little things that you can do with Amumu, but it is really, really insane how quick you can clear. It's actually pretty crazy how much damage he does as well with full AP Amumu, especially with Electrocute. You can go like Protobell, and what you do is you go for Leandri's Torment as your first item, which deals the damage over time with the pool, with the little tears, the pool that surrounds Amumu. You have the double bandage toss. You also have, Death Camp, Void Staff. You just go full AP, and he does a lot of damage. However, it means he's also super squishy. So I've one-shot AP Amumus before with like Caitlyn, for example. So I don't think he's that good, but he's good enough to move him up to A tier. I don't think he's as bad as Tryndamere and Master Yi. These two just completely suck. Like, every single time I see these two in the jungle, they're just terrible. I mean, to be fair, I could probably even move Blue Kayn down because, I don't know, the champ just doesn't do anything. But yeah, anyway, that's all the jungle changes that I've done. But yeah, in terms of everything else has stayed. As I can say, there is actually one other champion. Camille as well. Camille used to be an A+ tier, but I moved her up into S tier because of the recent rework of Camille. Camille's has definitely been rising up in priority in the jungle as well. She's been really, really good in the barrel lane, but she's also now really, really good in the jungle because she's easier to play, easier to execute, and she does a lot more damage now with her second ability, which means she does more damage, and also her jungle clear is a lot faster as well. So Camille's also moved up into the S tier. Moving on to mid lane, there's a few changes to mid lane that happened in the most recent patch. Zoe is an interesting one. Zoe didn't get the changes to live what Riot wanted to. So basically, they were calling them adjustments, but they were basically buffs to a second ability. They were going to change the amount of movement speed you get in the early game, and also the duration of the movement speed as well in the early game for Zoe. But it was basically a buff, because the problem is with Zoe, well, not problem, but the thing is with Zoe is that you always max your second ability last, so you're basically just getting a buff to the second ability, because you're not going to be able to level up the second ability to really feel the downsides of the nerf that happened into the later stages of the game. You're always going to feel that early game buff to the second ability that happens basically throughout the whole game. Like, very rarely you get to level 15 and you get to max your last ability, which in this case for Zoe is her second ability. So they basically just fixed her bug fix with her second ability, which means that Lichbane is now a viable item for Zoe. I think it was already viable. I think people are still using it, but now it's a viable item for Zoe. But Zoe is just absolutely disgusting. I don't know if any of you have seen like the Don stream, but he's currently rank 1 as Zoe, and he's absolutely pops off with Zoe. I mean, Zoe's a super fun champion to play, really annoying to deal with at times. I've seen a lot of fed Zoes, but really cool champion. Definitely recommend picking up Zoe. A few other champions as well. Even though Yone got nerfed, and I mentioned it a little bit in the jungle, I still think Yone mid lane is still very strong. You can still trade very easily, you can still farm up quite well, and you can still pop off with the roams with Yone mid lane. I still think Yone mid lane is fine, but again, I just think that jungle Yone got nerfed a little bit too much, and I think there's other junglers that are just better at the moment than Yone. But in the mid lane, I still feel like Yone is probably one of the best mid laners to play, to be honest with you. I still think he is very strong to play. Akshan did receive a little bit of a buff this patch for the second ability. The second ability goes down to like 2 seconds at maximum rank with the invisibility, and you also gain like mana per second now when you're chasing scoundrels. I've seen some one trick Akshans in high elo in legendary queue in EU, and they have popped off, like really popped off with Akshan. You know, basically just roaming around 24/7, just trying to get advantages with roaming around and basically not sitting in the mid lane at all, just trying to go for more kills and more assists, which is the big thing. But I don't think Akshan is like S tier worthy yet. I still think he's like A+, because I much prefer to play any of the S tier champions. Other than that, nothing else has changed in the mid lane. Everything else in the mid lane is still pretty much exactly the same. Not really any other champions to really talk about. You know, Vex is still really strong. Akali's still really good in the mid lane. Karma's still really easy champion. Castin is still insanely broken. Even after like nerfs and buffs that he received, you know, Castin is still insanely broken. You just need to farm up with him. Ari, really easy to play. Dinah's still really good. Irelia, Katarina's still really good, even though they're a little bit harder to play. Zed's still good. Ziggs, Galio, Twisted, like all these champions are still insanely good. You know, Lucian as well in the mid lane, still really good. Corki as well. All of these champions are insanely good, and obviously you have the lower tier champions like Kayle, Seraphine that just don't perform too well. You know, Aurelion Sol, for example, that doesn't really perform up to expectations. All right, on to the dual lane. We have some more changes to the dual lane. I know everyone's excited every single time they see my dual lane tier lists. And I have to talk about one champion and one champion only, and that is Caitlyn. I have really been enjoying the Caitlyn build with Stormrazor plus Static Shiv. I think that Caitlyn is an insane AD carry now. Now that I've, you know, kind of reignited the build with Caitlyn, because before I went for like Stormrazor, Infinity Edge, Lord Dominic's Regards, and normally with that and Lethal Tempo it's normally enough attack speed, but for some reason on Wild Rift Caitlyn's attack speed just feels a lot lower than on like PC League, for example. So that's why I've been going for like Stormrazor, Static Shiv, Rapid Fire Cannon, then going for like Lord Dominic's Regards and Infinity Edge, and then you have that double, you basically have a lot of attack speed from Stormrazor, Rapid Fire Cannon and Static Shiv. And that means you're going to have a lot of attack speed. That means you can auto attack more. And the great thing about Caitlyn as well is that she's one of the best blind pick AD carries as well in the game. It's like if your first pick is an AD carry, then all the time you can go for Caitlyn. Like Caitlyn barely has any losing matchups. If you're against aggressive bot lane duo like a Draven or something like that, all you have to do is just stay back and play passive. You have long range anyway. You can just farm up minions or use your first ability to farm up minions, and she still scales insanely well as well into the mid and late game. She's a lot better paired with aggressive supports like Nami, Janna, anyone like that could be really, really good. And also that means some champions can also still build under center for her, so she gains more attack speed, more damage. So yeah, Caitlyn is still really, really good. Kha'Zix is still really good. Tristana is still really good. Lucian's still really good. I mean, I think these are by far 4 of the best AD carries at the moment in the current meta. Just below, you still have the champions that are still, you know, fairly decent. Jinx is okay, but just less of a hyper carry than like Tristana, Kai'Sa, Caitlyn. Samira is still pretty decent, but kind of hard to play. Same with Vayne, same with Draven. These 3 champions are very, very difficult to play. That's why they're lower in the S tier, but if you can master them, they definitely all move up into the S plus tier. Corki is insanely good. I got kind of a new build for Corki as well, which I'll be doing very, very soon. He's still insanely strong. Xayah is okay, not too bad. Very good ultimate that can basically make you untargetable and a lot of easy fighting potential. Ezreal's still decent. Again, a little bit harder to play because you have to focus a lot more on skill shots and auto attacks, and Varus is still fairly decent. Obviously, Lucian did receive the little bit of the buff, a little bit of a buff this patch as well, to his first ability, which I didn't think he really needed, to be honest with you. But again, he was S plus tier before for me. He still is S plus tier for me now. Ashe did receive a change as well. I've been trying out some different Ashe builds. I think Ashe is pretty decent. I tried to max Ranger's focus first, which I'll probably talk about in another video. But trying to max Ranger's focus, the first ability of Ashe now, is decent. Volleys feels kind of weak though if you max your first ability first, but it makes for an interesting alternative to maybe go for your first ability maxed first, which is quite interesting. So I think Ashe is pretty strong at the moment. Jin's still okay. Oh, big thing about Jin is that his bug fix is finally coming in patch 4.1. If you don't know, Lord Dominic's Regards is currently bugged with Jin, so the extra attack speed that you get from Lord Dominic's Regards passive should turn into extra AD for Jin, but it doesn't at the moment. It's currently bugged. But that's gonna be fixed in patch 4.1. I got it confirmed on Twitter by Maddies, which is pretty cool. A few AP champions that you can play in the bot lane if you need to. Ziggs, Orianna, and Lux, and Misfortune's there as well, which is okay. She's pretty decent. Seraphine, Karma, Morgana, just weaker AP carries to the ones above. Then you have Akshan, which I don't think is that good in the dual lane. I think he's more of a mid lane champion. Senna's down here, which is obviously farming carry Senna, and Brandon Veigar as well. And then moving on to the supports, there's been a few changes to the support role. I want to talk about the cat a little bit, Yuumi. Yuumi is an interesting one. I don't know if Yuumi is good enough to be in the S plus tier. Now, at the moment in the current meta, enchanters are insanely strong. Karma is really strong. Nami's really strong. Lulu's really strong. Janna, Yuumi, Lux, Ashe. All these champions insanely strong. Tank supports, not that strong at the moment. I mean, if you're really, really good with Pyke, then Pyke can also be very strong as a carry support. But tank support's not that strong, but there are some good tank supports still, like Thresh, Rakan, Alistar, and Nautilus. But enchanter supports are just far better, especially because we're in a hyper carry ADC meta. So like items like Ardent Center is still very, very good. And also laning phase is a little bit more important now in Wild Rift. So champions like Karma and Nami that can play very aggressive during laning phase and take positive trades pretty much every single time. Especially Karma as well, with how much damage and how much crowd control she offers, is really, really good. But the cat's an interesting one because she's like okay. I mean, she offers a lot to the team with the extra damage that she gives to you when she basically jumps on you. Her healing is okay, but you have to focus on timing your healing now, because you need to make sure when you use your heal with Yuumi that the your ally either uses an auto attack or ability, so they get extra healing as well. But Yuumi is very, very strong. I moved her up from A plus into S tier. I was thinking of even moving her into S plus tier, but I'm not going to just yet. I don't think she's carry worthy enough, because the thing is with Yuumi is you have to rely a lot on your team. You know, whereas like Karma, you can solo carry. You know, she does a lot of damage. You can solo carry with her crowd control. Same with Nami. You can kind of solo carry in a way. Lulu, maybe not too much. If you like polymorph someone, then maybe that could be really good. If you ulti the right target, it can be okay. But champions like Yuumi and Lulu rely a lot more on your team than anything else, because you don't really have a lot of damage. You don't really have a lot of carry stats yourself. I mean, Yuumi, you can go full AP if you want to and go for carry Yuumi. You can go for that route as well. But again, you just don't feel that carry potential with them sort of champions compared to like other ones as well. As I said, the tank supports are still very, very good as well. Some of them did receive a nerf, you know, Nautilus did receive a nerf, Rakan did receive a nerf, but both these champions are still very, very good. Nautilus, because he has so much crowd control with his whole kit, his ultimate, his auto attacks, his third ability, everything else has so much crowd control, and he is still insanely strong. Rakan, again, still one of the best supports in my opinion, one of the best carry supports, just because how much CC he has, how much damage he does as well at the same time with electrocute, in a crazy engaged champion and a pop-off champion that can do a lot of things on with Rakan. Ashe obviously received a nerf to her volley, which is basically a nerf to support Ashe. I still think support Ashe can still be very, very good, especially because Imperial Mandate is still very strong. You'll basically can spam multiple, like you could spam multiple volleys all the time with mana immune, because you have basically unlimited mana. Even though the cooldown went up, you still build a lot of ability haste with the build as well, so there's not really a problem with that. So yeah, Ashe support is still pretty damn good. Lux did receive some changes. Obviously they nerfed the AP ratio, sorry, but they're buffing the base shield value of Lux, the same with her third ability as well. So it's buffing support Lux a lot. I've still kept her in S tier. I don't think she's worthy enough to move up into S+ tier. I do need to play her again though, to see what she feels like, because I think it's very interesting to see, you know, if you have like a Lux Caitlyn lane, for example, you know, Lux Caitlyn could be one of the most annoying lanes to deal with, because both of them have poke, both of them have a lot of damage, and you also have the shielding as well from Lux, which is very, very strong, especially with Protect Enchant as well. Soraka, I've actually moved up into A+ tier. I played with and against a lot of Sorakas in high elo in legendary queue. I'm starting to see the potential of Soraka, and you know, one of the other reasons as well why I moved Soraka up is no one builds I don't know why no one builds anti-heal against Soraka. Every single time I see a Soraka, I'm like, I type to my team, I'm like, cool, we need to buy anti-heal this game. Does anyone on my team buy anti-heal? Of course they don't. So it's like Soraka is basically free. Like Soraka basically gets free heals all the time, because no one on my team has anti-heal. So it means that Soraka gets heal after heal after heal, and you just get so much sustain. And to be honest, sometimes even with anti-heal being built with Soraka, which against Soraka, which obviously you need to build anyway, but even when you do build anti-heal, Soraka still does a lot of healing and can save a lot of champions during team fights. You know, if she stays at the back line, if she doesn't get focused by the enemy team, then Soraka could be a carrying herself with all her healing, her silence field. She can also heal herself with her first ability. So I definitely see the potential of Soraka, and that's why I moved her up into A+ tier. I moved Blitzcrank up as well to B. I don't think Blitzcrank is C tier. I think he's like B at best. I mean, he's on the same position as maybe these. I mean, I don't know, maybe he's better than all of these, to be honest, but I don't know. Maybe he's better than Shen, Morgana, Nasus. I don't know. Like, Blitzcrank is such a hit and miss champion. Even after the buff he received, he's very hit and miss. It's like, if your support Blitzcrank can land a hook, then happy days. It's really, really good. If he can't land a hook, then, you know, you're kind of a useless champion. That's the thing with Blitzcrank. He could be one of the best carries if you hook a high value target, but if you keep missing hook over and over again, he's basically useless and he can't really do too much. So that is why Blitzcrank, for me, is sitting down in the B tier. That is pretty much everything for the tier list. That's all the changes that I wanted to talk about. If you have any questions, or if you have anything that you want me to talk about, let me know down in the comments. I always reply to the comments as soon as possible. But yeah, a few changes. I think this is a pretty decent patch. I think there's quite a few champions that you can play, and it's very, very good. As I said, I have updated the website as well. I got the new Diana build on here. I got the new Caitlyn and Lucian build and everything on here as well. I won't show you the Lucian build because I'll wait for that for another video. But I got the new Diana jungle build here with Luna's Echo. I got Caitlyn here as well. So a lot of decent changes happening. I'm really excited for the next patch as well. Hopefully the next patch will be a good one as well. Very interested to see what they do. But for now, that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next Wild Rift video. Peace.